Hey guys, this is Dan from Let's Tank, and today I'm just going to be going over the patch 7.2.5 World of Warcraft tank changes, or the notes, as you like to say, and my thoughts on them in general. These may get changed, but it's very unlikely, so you can pretty much take this as this is what's going to be going live. I think it's next week, and work out what tank you may want to be changing to or may want to play from there. So let's first look at the Blood Death Knight changes. So straight away you'll notice that Blood Death Knights are getting a 15% damage of all abilities increased by 15%. On top of that, you're then getting Heart Strikes damages increased by a further 10%, as well as Death Strikes damages being increased by another 10%. And then Soul Forge is being replaced with a new talent called Heart of Ice. And what that does is Death Strike will now increase the duration of Icebound Fortitude by 2 seconds. And then there's two other changes where Icebound Fortitude and Vampire Blood are now pretty much just being learned at level 57 from 65 and 60. And that's pretty much it. These changes are really good for the Blood Death Knight. One of the main weaknesses I found with the Blood DK was that the damage wasn't like at top tier. So hopefully now they can match this, and bigger death strikes, obviously bigger healing for yourself, so that's always great. And also bigger shields. I really think Death Knights in general are going to be really strong in TOS, so we'll have to wait and see. I'll be playing mine as my alt, so if it does get to that point where I feel it is going to be really strong, then I'll probably be switching over. So in the later guides you might see me swap to a Blood Death Knight. Next, let's look at the Vengeance changes. Damage of all abilities, including the talents, is increased by 15%. Blade turning has been redesigned, so parrying attack increases your pain generation by 20% for 5 seconds. Demon Spikes can only be extended by a maximum of 3 times its base duration. Demonic Infusion cooldown reduced to 1.5 minutes, previously it was 2 minutes. Feast of Souls total healing increased by 20%. Fracture now costs 30 pain, and it was 20 pain. Immolation Aura periodic damage increased by an additional 22%. Last Resort will not absorb a killing blow of more than 200% of the player's maximum health. Lesser Soul Fragment generation from Shear has been increased by 10%. Soul Cleave now costs 25 to 50 pain, was 30 to 60, and now heals for 6.6 times attack power per 25 pain spent. Spirit Bomb has been redesigned. It now consumes all soul fragments within 25 yards and then explodes, afflicting nearby enemies with Frailty for 20 seconds and damaging them for 3 times attack power via per fragment. You heal for 20% of all damage you deal to enemies with Frailty. When Demon Spikes is activated and a Demon Spike buff is already present, the values of the 2 buffs are now correctly averaged, and when soul fragments are created that exceed the cap of 5 active fragments, the oldest fragment is now automatically consumed if it is within 60 yards of the Demon Hunter. If it is more than 60 yards from the Demon Hunter, it despawns. So overall, some really good and crazy buffs for the Vengeance Hunter. Probably another one to look out for, going from like a lower tier tank to definitely a higher tiered tank. And hopefully we'll see a lot more in top tier play. Next, let's look at the Brewmaster. So straight away, Brewmaster passive armor bonuses increased to 25%. It used to be 15%. And is now a visible passive trait called Brewmaster's Balance, which is learned at level 10. Now, they've done this change because of the balancing, as I like to say, that they've put onto Brewmasters, which we'll go over now. So Blackout Strike cooldown is no longer affected by haste, which kind of affects the gameplay a lot. Dragonfire Brew, which is an artifact trait, now also increases the duration of Breath of Fire by 100%. Hot Blooded, another artifact trait, now reduces damage taken by 1% per rank. It used to be 2%. Iron Skin Brew can only be extended to a maximum of 3 times its base duration. Elusive Dance now increases Purify percent by 20%. It was 15%. Fortifying Brew increases Stagger percent by 10%. It was 20%. High Tolerance now grants 8, 12 or 15% haste, and it was 5, 10 or 15%. Invoke Nazu, the Black Ox, now deals 50% increased damage. Iron Skin Brew increases Stagger by 35%, and it was 40%. Your Mastery is now also triggered by hitting with Blackout Strike and Breath of Fire. Purifying Brew now clears 40% of your damage lead with Stagger, and it used to be 50%. Rushing Jade Wind's been buffed by its duration, has been increased by 50%. Special Delivery proc chance increased by 100%, it used to be 30%, and damage reduced by 70%. Staggered damage cannot exceed 1000% of maximum health. Staggering around, the artifact trait has been redesigned to Purify and Brew now clears an additional 1, 2, 3 or 4% of the damage delayed by stagger. So overall you can see Brewmasters has going to be getting a lot of gameplay changes, so it's going to require a bit of testing. I'm sure the Monk Discord going a bit crazy over what they've announced. Overall though, they did need a bit of tweaking because they were kind of overpowered for doing stuff. For example, the blood tanking on Tichondrius was really easy to do as a monk, as well as breaking bonds, especially in the earlier days of Mythic Gul'dan when you needed to break like 5 or 6. It's pretty easy now with just the 3. Pretty much any tank can do it, but having the ability to just purify that amount of damage, the nerf was definitely needed. They might have gone a little bit overboard with these nerfs, especially the haste not affecting Blackout Strike. That's going to cause a lot of rotation problems and might make the class feel a little bit clunkier than it previously had done. So next, let's look at the Protection Paladin. So this is a very short one. Firstly, Adamant Defender will not absorb a killing blow of more than 200% of the player's maximum health. And then Shield of the Righteous can only be extended to a maximum of 3 times its base duration. So nothing really too major. Adamant Defender's a bit of a meh. You can get around it by using other cooldowns with it just to make sure you stop dying. But yeah, nothing too major there. So let's look at the Druid. So firstly, healing from Frenzied Regen and Sky Sex Hold is no longer increased by Mastery. Galactic Guardian's prot rate reduced by 30%. Gore is now also activated by Maul. Iron Fur now increases armor by 65%. It was 80%. Maul damage increased by 650%. Cost increased to 45 rage, it used to be 20. Maul is now on the global cooldown and has no self cooldown, it was 3 seconds. And Maul damage is not increased in PvP. Markov Ursol has been totally removed, and rage generation per melee swing has been reduced by 14%. Now, as you can see, Druids have had a really big nerf to them. They're still going to be pretty high up there with the tanking list, but they're not going to be as strong as they once were, especially with the removal of Markov Ursol. I think that might have been maybe a little too much there, and the nerf of their armor as well, also probably a little too much. I also feel that the rage gen is also kind of clunky, so increasing the amount of rage you actually need to spend on certain abilities is going to make them, personally, to me, feel a bit more clunkier. I never really liked how the rage generation on Druids felt, and I still don't, especially when you compare it to, say, a Protection Warrior or a Demon Hunter and their generators. A good thing to note is you're still going to have a massive health pool. Now finally, let's look at the Protection Warrior. So Ignore Pain Absorb amount has been increased by 20%. Indomitable now increases maximum health by 20%. It was 25%, and maximum effect of Ignore Pain by 20%, and that also was 25%. Revenge damage has been reduced once again by 12%, and Shield Block can only be extended to a maximum of 3 times its base duration. Now overall, I'm kind of glad that they started to buff Ignore Pain. I really don't think they needed to nerf revenge damage any more than it already is. Protection Warriors aren't the strongest damage dealers. Well, at least I don't think they are anyway. They're pretty up there, but they're not as like strong as like a Seraphim Paladin, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, yeah, I really don't think they needed to nerf revenge damage anymore. That's just kind of pointless. Indomitable might have been needed to be nerfed, but I'd highly doubt it. You're still going to take Devastator because it's just such a strong talent, especially with Ignore Pain getting a buff. You're going to be wanting to get as much rage as you can so you can use more Ignore Pains in general. So yeah, Protection Warriors, pretty happy with. Kind of sad that they nerf revenge damage again, but is what it is. Still going to be a fun tank to play. Still one of my top listed tanks to have fun with. So overall, I like how they're trying to make all the tanks viable in their own way. Seems like decent patch notes. They have probably over nerfed Guardian Druids just a tad. I'm really glad to see that Blood DK's damage has gone up, as well as Demon Hunters are getting a bit of love finally. Should be a very interesting race coming up, and it'll be interesting to see what the top raiding guilds are going to be using for tank strats and stuff. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Please like, comment and sub for more of it.